What happens when she realizes you've lost interest? It isn't calm, it's chaos. Not the kind you see, but the storm that rips through her certainty when the man she thought she owned suddenly slips beyond her control. What comes next is more intense, more revealing, and it flips the balance in your favor. Stay with me, because her reaction is the mirror that exposes both her true feelings and your hidden power. Before we dive in, like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station. Start this journey now. Drop a 1 if you're still in the storm, or a 2 if you're ready to rise above it. And listen carefully, because what happens first is not peace, it's shock, and that shock will change everything. Let's begin. 1. The shock of losing control. The first thing she feels isn't calm, it's shock. A sudden jolt that tears through the illusion that she was the one holding the reins. For weeks, maybe even years, she lived in the comfort of certainty. She believed you were always invested, always showing up, always predictable. Certainty is a warm blanket. It reassures her, even when she takes you for granted. She told herself she knew exactly where you stood, that she could count on your emotions being steady and available. But when that steady energy disappears, when your presence fades without warning, something far more powerful happens than just surprise. You create a vacuum, and that vacuum terrifies her because certainty has been replaced with a silence she cannot decode. This silence doesn't just confuse her, it shakes the foundation of what she believed to be true. It's the beginning of cognitive dissonance, that painful clash between belief and evidence. She thought you'd always be there, but reality now tells a different story. That inner conflict has her pacing at night, scrolling through old messages, replaying every detail, whispering questions to herself. Did I misread him? What changed? Was he never who I thought he was? And the harder she tries to convince herself she's fine, the louder your silence becomes. The truth is, the silence isn't just absence, it's a mirror she can't look away from. Her mind refuses to sit still. It races, it loops, it fights to explain the unexplainable. She clings to the old rules of the game, only to realize those rules no longer apply. This is the precise moment the balance of power shifts, because she's no longer certain of her place, and uncertainty is far more painful than rejection. Here is where your discipline matters most. Your role isn't to explain, to comfort, or to rush in and rescue her from the storm you didn't create. The Stoics remind us, silence is a form of speech. By holding your ground, by refusing to fill the void with frantic words or desperate gestures, you give her the one thing she cannot manipulate, time with her own thoughts. And in that discomfort, she begins to see herself, not you, more clearly. She sees her assumptions, her entitlement, her illusion of control unravel. And this is the pivot point, the beginning of everything that follows. Because when the shock takes hold, when the silence echoes louder than words, that is when the entire balance of the relationship begins to shift forever. This is not the end of your story. It's the start of hers unraveling, and from here, every move she makes will be shaped by that first jolt of losing control. Second, her desperate reach for validation. Validation is oxygen, and when you cut off the supply, panic sets in. What she's really addicted to is not simply your presence, but the steady stream of recognition and reassurance she received every time you gave her your attention. When that attention fades, she feels a hole open up inside her, an emptiness that gnaws at her identity. She doesn't just miss you, she misses the version of herself that existed in your eyes. The reflection of being wanted, being important, being the center of your focus. Without it, she feels disoriented, almost invisible. That's why she reaches. At first, it might look small. An innocent, "Hey, how have you been?" text, a sudden like on an old photo, or a quick comment meant to spark your curiosity. But none of these gestures are random. They're not accidents. They're probes, carefully placed to test if you're still emotionally available, to measure whether she can still pull you into her orbit. Sometimes it's subtle. Other times it's deliberate, even manipulative. A story posted at the exact hour she knows you'll see it. A casual mention of another man just sharp enough to provoke jealousy. Each move is designed with one question in mind. Do I still matter to him? This is where most men stumble. They mistake these signals for genuine interest. They see a text pop up and their hearts leap, believing she's coming back with sincerity. So they rush to respond, pouring energy into long replies, explaining themselves, or worse, chasing again. But here's the truth. The moment you validate her too quickly, you hand the power back. You confirm that she still controls your emotional state, that even in her absence, she still owns your attention. And when that happens, the chase ends, not because you won her back, but because she no longer feels the tension that pulled her toward you in the first place. Her casual reach-outs are calculated. If you respond with eagerness, you don't create mystery. You give her reassurance. And reassurance is the exact opposite of what keeps attraction alive. Instead of leaning in, she leans back, because the unanswered question in her mind has already been solved. You're still hers whenever she wants you. So the answer is not to ignore her, nor is it to reward her with too much enthusiasm. The answer is composure. If she says, "I miss you," don't dive into sentiment. Respond with calm strength. "I hope you're doing well." If she says, "I saw something that reminded me of you," don't feed the fire. Say, "Yeah, I've been busy with good things." No edge, no heat, just quiet confidence. By holding this line, you force her into a position she hasn't been in before, working for your validation instead of receiving it effortlessly. And this is the turning point, because the more she has to struggle to reclaim the sense of power she once took for granted, the more she begins to realize that you're no longer the prize she already owns. You're the prize she must now earn. And it's in that reversal where everything changes, where the old dynamic dies and a new respect begins to grow. And this is exactly where the game tilts in your favor. 3. Curiosity awakens reflection. Once her desperate reach for validation falls flat, something more powerful begins to stir: curiosity. And curiosity, though it feels harmless at first, is a trap she sets for herself. The human mind hates unsolved puzzles. When you change the script she thought she had memorized, when you step outside the predictable role she cast you in, it gnaws at her. She cannot simply close the chapter because your silence leaves too many questions unanswered. So she replays old conversations in her head, scrolling through your past messages as though they contain hidden codes. She dissects every small detail, trying to figure out when the shift happened. She turns to friends for reassurance, asking, "Do you think he's seeing someone? Why hasn't he reached out? Was I wrong about him all along?" These aren't idle thoughts. They are restless investigations born from the discomfort of not knowing. What she is experiencing is what psychologists call the endowment effect. People overvalue what they once owned. The moment she feels she no longer owns your attention, it suddenly becomes precious in her eyes. The same energy she overlooked before is now the very thing she cannot stop craving. This isn't nostalgia. It's loss magnified by the realization that she may never regain the same certainty she once enjoyed. And her curiosity isn't gentle, it becomes obsessive. The very silence that frustrates her also amplifies you in her mind. What used to be background noise is now the loudest sound in the room. A song on the radio, a familiar street corner, even the simple act of opening her phone. Everything points back to you because there is no new script to overwrite the old one. The more she tries to escape the thought of you, the deeper she falls into it. Here's where the Stoic mindset gives you the advantage. Your power lies not in chasing answers, but in letting her chase the questions. Marcus Aurelius said, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." While she dissects the past, you discipline yourself to focus on the present, your body, your mind, your mission. You don't need to feed her curiosity because your silence is already doing the work for you. And here lies the irony. The less you scramble for explanations, the more she scrambles for meaning. The less you chase answers, the more she chases questions. And that chase, fueled by her own mind, becomes the very thing that keeps you alive in her thoughts long after your words have faded. And this is where the story deepens, because curiosity, once awakened, rarely lets go. 4. The ego's silent rebellion. Nothing bleeds more than an ego stripped of certainty. What hurts her now is not only the heart, but the ego, the part of her identity that thrives on control and on the belief that she mattered more to you than anyone else. Ego feeds on the idea that you would always respond, always care, always revolve around her presence. But when your silence tells her that she no longer commands your emotions, that belief begins to shatter. And ego does not break quietly, it rebels. She may start to flirt with others, not out of genuine desire, but to broadcast that she's still wanted. She may flaunt a new, hollow confidence, posting pictures or stories designed to suggest she's happier than ever. She may even try to provoke your jealousy, planting seeds of doubt to see if she can still stir your emotions. On the surface, it looks like strength, but beneath it, it's fear wearing the mask of pride. This is where the trap lies, because if you take the bait, if you react to her performances, you restore her ego. You give her the validation she lost, and suddenly she no longer has to confront the possibility that your silence means she isn't in control. Most men crumble here. They see her indifference and panic, rushing to prove themselves, rushing to defend their value, not realizing that by defending it, they hand it back to her. And once again, the balance shifts away from them. But the truth is simple. This isn't love speaking. It's fear disguised as pride. Fear that she might not be as significant in your world as she once believed. And this is your test. If you react, you lose. But if you remain unmoved, you win a victory deeper than words. The Stoic path offers a reminder. He who angers you conquers you. Her ego wants to conquer your peace, to prove that she can still pull you out of your center. Deny it that satisfaction. Respond, if you respond at all, with dignity and restraint. Do not defend. Do not chase. Do not collapse into the old dynamic. Hold your frame. Stay calm. Because when your calm meets her chaos, something powerful happens. She is forced to face her own reflection in the mirror of silence. She sees that her tactics no longer work, that her ego no longer controls you. And in that realization, the foundation begins to crumble. And this is the exact moment when the fire of her pride flickers into the smoke of self-doubt, an inner battle she cannot ignore, and one that will only deepen as your silence holds. 5. When the void becomes unbearable. Silence isn't absence, it's presence magnified. At first, she convinces herself that she can handle your withdrawal. She tells herself she doesn't need your energy, your laughter, your grounding influence. She believes she can adjust, that life will simply move forward without the weight of your presence. But time has a way of stripping away illusions. As the days stretch into weeks, the emptiness you left behind doesn't shrink, it expands. What felt like space at first begins to feel like a void, and that void grows heavier with every passing day. Psychologists call it loss aversion. The pain of losing something familiar is twice as strong as the joy of gaining something new. And now she feels that truth pressing down on her. Every small reminder of you, a song you both loved, the corner of a street you once walked together, a phrase you used to say, hits her like a sharp blade. Those moments cut deeper now because there are no new memories to replace the old ones. The story ended too abruptly, and the silence makes every old chapter echo louder. She begins to realize something she never admitted before. You weren't just another man filling space in her life. You were the stabilizing force, the quiet anchor she leaned on without ever noticing. You were the one who brought balance to her storms, the one who offered presence, not noise, and like most people who take stability for granted, she only recognizes it after it's gone. This is where the truth pierces through her pride. She undervalued you until your absence exposed just how much weight you carried. And yet, this is not the moment for you to move. The hardest lesson of discipline is also the simplest one. Do nothing. Let the void do the speaking. Your silence is not passivity. It is the arena where her reflection battles against her denial. Every hour she spends in that void, the mirror becomes clearer. She cannot escape it, no matter how hard she tries to distract herself. And it is here, in the unbearable weight of that silence, that regret is born. Not regret out of nostalgia, but regret out of truth, because the presence she once dismissed has now become the absence she cannot ignore. And this is where her resistance begins to crack, where memory collides with longing, and where the story shifts in your favor without you saying a single word. This is the moment where silence stops being an ending and starts becoming her torment. 6. Why silence turns into strength. Silence is not weakness, it's warfare without words. Too many men mistake silence for passivity, believing that stepping back means they've surrendered. So they rush to explain themselves, to seek closure, to try to pull her back with speeches and promises. But every word becomes ammunition she can twist. Every plea becomes proof that she still commands their emotions. Silence, however, is different. It cannot be bent or reshaped. It sits like a stone, immovable, forcing her to confront something she can't manipulate, her own restless mind. And that is why silence carries a different kind of power. When you withdraw your voice, you strip away her ability to lean on your narrative. She no longer has your words to soothe her doubts, no clear signs to reassure her that she still matters. Instead, she's left alone with a growing storm of questions. Why hasn't he reached out? Did I misjudge him? Has he truly moved on? Each unanswered question digs deeper, not into your heart, but into hers. Here's the paradox. Your silence doesn't erase you, it amplifies you. It's as if you've left behind a vacuum, and in that vacuum, every trait she once overlooked now begins to echo louder. Your steadiness, your loyalty, your laughter, even your presence that once felt ordinary becomes extraordinary in its absence. The silence magnifies you until she can't escape the weight of what she lost. But silence is not just about staying quiet. It's about what you do while you're quiet. This is where men either waste their advantage or build a new life that makes them untouchable. The Stoic way is simple. Don't just withdraw, transform. While she wrestles with her doubts, you sharpen yourself. Work out, advance your career, deepen your passions, spend time with people who lift you higher. Let your growth be the loudest answer she cannot ignore, because while words fade, transformation cannot be denied. And that's the beauty of silence. It's not emptiness, it's evolution. When she finally looks back, what unsettles her isn't just the quiet. It's the man you became in that quiet. A man stronger, calmer, more grounded than before. Silence isn't just withdrawal, it's transformation witnessed from afar. And when that realization lands, she doesn't just miss the man she lost, she regrets not standing beside the man you've now become. And that is where silence stops being a void and starts becoming undeniable strength. 7. Emotional tension that consumes her. Uncertainty is the most powerful form of tension. It gnaws at the soul in ways certainty never could. Once upon a time, she believed she had you mapped out perfectly. She knew what to expect, when you would respond, how deeply you cared. That predictability gave her security, even when she didn't fully appreciate it. But now, everything has shifted. The map she relied on no longer guides her, and suddenly she has no idea where you stand. This uncertainty doesn't just confuse her, it unravels her. It stirs anxiety, regret, and guilt all at once. Psychologists call it ambiguous loss, the kind of loss where the person is still alive but emotionally absent. And this type of loss is the hardest to process because it leaves no closure. You're not gone, but you're no longer accessible. You exist in her world, yet out of her reach, and it's that contradiction that torments her most. Everyday life becomes a minefield of reminders. A song plays on the radio, and she hears your voice in the lyrics. A casual conversation with a friend circles back to something you once said. Walking past a familiar place drags her into a memory she thought she buried. You live rent-free in her mind because your silence has left a story unfinished, and the unfinished always demands attention. The more she tries to distract herself, the deeper she falls into obsession. That's the cruel irony of tension. The harder she pushes it away, the stronger it pulls her back in. What once was background noise is now front and center, her thoughts circling you with a relentless grip. Every attempt to move on becomes another reminder that she hasn't, and here is where your discipline defines you. The Stoics remind us of a timeless truth. You cannot control her emotions, but you can control your own. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Her storm is not your burden. Your strength is found in standing calm while the chaos rages around her. And that is why the longer the storm consumes her, the more unshakable you appear in contrast. She feels tension, but you radiate stability. She spirals, but you remain grounded. And in that contrast, respect is rebuilt. Because while she drowns in the weight of unanswered questions, you stand taller, showing that silence did not weaken you. It made you immovable. And this is the very moment she begins to realize that the man she thought she had figured out is no longer the man she left behind. 8. Curiosity that forces action. Curiosity can only live in silence for so long before it bursts into action. The questions in her mind grow too loud, too persistent, and too heavy to ignore. She can no longer sit quietly with the uncertainty that your absence has created. The need to know, the need to confirm, the need to test, it consumes her until she breaks the silence herself. And when she does, it rarely comes with grand gestures. It often slips out in something subtle, a like on your photo, a casual "hope you're good" text, or an engineered excuse to cross paths with you. These actions may look small, but they carry weight. They are her attempts to re-establish control, to find out if she can still draw you back into her orbit. Each move is her way of asking the same silent question: am I still significant to him? But this is the moment where your discipline is tested. Many men see her reaching out and their emotions surge. They leap at the chance, pouring out long responses, explaining themselves, or rushing to meet up. They mistake her curiosity for love, her action for commitment. And the instant they do, they surrender the leverage they built through silence. What could have been a turning point becomes a reset to the old cycle. Her certainty restored, your progress undone. This is where you must hold your ground. Your response should not feed her craving for reassurance, but neither should it come from bitterness or coldness. The answer is calm detachment, a presence that shows you're not desperate for her attention. If she says, "We should catch up sometime," your reply isn't eager agreement. It's balanced composure. "I've been focused on a lot, but I hope you're doing well." Short, respectful, controlled. You don't over-explain. You don't rush. You let her invest more. Because the deeper truth is this: love without effort loses respect. When she realizes you cannot be won back cheaply, when she sees that your attention is no longer something she can summon at will, her respect for you begins to rebuild. Curiosity drove her to act, but it's your composure that will determine what happens next. And this is the pivot point, the place where silence turns into power, and where the man she once overlooked now becomes the man she must chase. And that shift, once it takes hold, changes everything. 9. Emotional control, the Stoic advantage. Control your emotions and you control the game. When she reaches out, it won't always be with sweetness or warmth. More often it comes with hidden barbs. She might bring up old wounds from the past, drop another man's name into the conversation, or press you with questions designed to spark a reaction. It's not about reconnection, it's about power. What she truly wants to know is whether she still owns a piece of you, whether your emotions still orbit around her influence. This is the trap most men don't see. They think they're defending their pride by responding with fire, anger, or long explanations. But every time you react emotionally, you prove you're still tied to her approval. You show her that even in silence, even in distance, she can still pull the strings. And in that instant, you give away the very strength your discipline had earned. But here's the paradox. When you remain calm, everything changes. Calm is rare. Calm is power. In a world where most people are ruled by impulse, the man who breathes before he speaks, who chooses silence over outburst, stands apart. Emotional control unsettles her more than anger ever could, because it reveals a truth she cannot deny. She no longer controls you. The Stoics taught the art of mastery over self, and this is where their wisdom becomes your weapon. Practice response over reaction. If she presses you, pause. Breathe before you answer. Keep your tone steady, your words minimal, your presence unshaken. Show her that you are anchored in your own center, not tossed around by the storms she tries to stir. You do not need to prove, defend, or justify. You only need to remain grounded. And that's where the real attraction is born. Emotional control is magnetic because it speaks of inner strength, of a man who is not just free from her, but free from the chaos of the past. It tells her you are no longer the man who bends to every word or breaks under every test. You are a man who has learned that peace is power. And when she sees that, the game is no longer hers to play, it's yours to decide. And this is where the silence transforms into dominance, where respect begins to grow, and where she realizes she cannot shake you the way she once did. 10. The grace of walking away. The final victory is not her return, it's your release. Too many men believe the highest form of triumph is when she comes back, apologizing, admitting regret, or begging for another chance. But the deeper truth is that winning is not measured by her return. It is measured by your ability to transcend the need for her validation entirely. When you no longer hinge your worth on her presence, you step into a strength far greater than anything she could give or take away. Walking away with grace is not about bitterness, and it's not about revenge. Those things still tie you to her, still keep you chained to the same cycle of emotional dependence. But when you move on with dignity, quietly, without drama, you embody a strength she cannot ignore. Graceful detachment sends a message louder than any angry words could ever deliver. I value myself too much to remain where I am not honored. And that message doesn't just echo to her, it resonates in your own soul. Here's the paradox she cannot escape. The more you thrive without her, the more her regret grows. She sees you smiling, building, evolving, and the contrast cuts deep. What once felt ordinary to her now shines like gold because she no longer has access to it. And while she wrestles with questions, you no longer wrestle with anything at all. You are already free. The Stoic path calls you not to chase shadows of the past, but to embody virtue in the present. Live your philosophy. Build your life in such a way that your joy, your success, and your peace become undeniable. Not to prove anything to her, not to keep her watching, but because this is what a man does when he returns home to himself. You don't need to post about it or parade your growth. True transformation requires no announcement. It is seen in your calm, your discipline, your rising energy. And this is the truth that lingers. The man who walks with grace doesn't need to be chosen again. He has already chosen himself. And that choice is what makes him untouchable. Because in the end, respect doesn't come from her approval. It comes from your refusal to betray your own worth. And this is where your story doesn't just close the chapter with her. It opens the greater book of the man you were always meant to become. That is not just victory. That is freedom. And freedom is the one thing no one can take from you. The journey was never about pulling strings to make her miss you. That's a shallow game, and games always collapse. What this path is truly about is reclaiming yourself, the man you may have lost while pouring too much into someone else. She will move through shock, through the ache of the void, through the restless tension that drives her into action. That is her storm. But your path cannot mirror hers. Your path is stillness. It is self-mastery. It is purpose. The silence you hold is not emptiness. It is the ground where you rebuild. Every moment you resist the urge to explain, to chase, to prove, is a moment you grow stronger. The man who controls his own emotions is unshakable because he no longer depends on anyone else for stability. This is where the Stoics speak across centuries to us. Man conquers the world by conquering himself. And here lies the real truth. The greatest victory is not found in her regret, in her return, or even in her realization of what she lost. The deepest victory is your rebirth. It's becoming the man who does not just survive silence, but transforms in it. And when you rise from that silence, you rise untouchable, proof that freedom begins the moment you choose yourself. The true victory isn't her regret, it's your freedom. Walking away with grace means you're no longer begging for what should have been yours all along. If this message grounds you, like the video and subscribe to Stoic Station. And seal it with a vow. Drop this in the comments. I walk with dignity. Because every step you take with self-respect is a step away from the chains of the past and a step closer to the life you deserve.